So last week, the Greens-led Yarra Council announced that they would not recognise January 26th as Australia Day, would stop holding citizenship ceremonies on that day, and would officially support the Change the Date campaign to change the date of Australia Day. And that resulted in the federal government stepping in and stripping Yarra Council of their right to perform citizenship ceremonies. Remember that Yarra Council cited as reasons for their stance a groundswell of support from both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people across the country. That's right, they had to go outside their own community to find this groundswell of support. And where exactly did this groundswell of support come from? Well, surprise, surprise, it came from Indigenous activist groups, most of whom don't even live in the Yarra Council area. And not only that, some of the groundswell of support that did come from within the community came from the council members' own mates. And after all that, they managed to get a paltry 88 responses from Indigenous Australians. They disregarded the other 24 from non-Indigenous, of which only 56 said they thought Yarra Council should support the Change the Date campaign. Note that 20 or almost a quarter of survey respondents couldn't even be bothered to answer that question. And even the separate street survey of 281 non-Indigenous people in the Yarra Council area showed just 46% supported changing the date. So put aside whether or not you agree with changing the date of Australia Day, these activist council members completely misrepresented this so-called groundswell of support. And if you live in that area, perhaps you should consider ousting those council members that participated in this stitch-up. But not to be outdone, another surprise, surprise, Melbourne Council has been even more brazen in their disregard of community consultation and blatantly dishonest tactics to push their agenda. On Monday night, Darebin Council voted in favour of scrapping its citizenship ceremony on January 26th. That then led to Assistant Minister for Immigration Alex Hawke to take away the council's power to safeguard the integrity of citizenship ceremonies in Australia, stating that the overwhelming majority of Australians support Australia Day remaining on January 26th. Both Darebin and Yarra councils have had their ability to conduct citizenship ceremonies revoked. So the Darebin Council copied to some extent what Yarra Council did by conducting a survey of council advisory groups and the local Aboriginal Advisory Committee, and they got a whopping 81 responses. But unlike Yarra, they did not conduct a wider community survey. But that didn't stop them from completely misrepresenting the results. A report delivered to Council before the meeting cited an overwhelming majority of people were in favour of change. However, the research was based on a survey of 81 people from 27 council advisory groups and the local Aboriginal Advisory Committee. The city of Darebin is home to 146,719 residents according to the 2016 census, with an Indigenous population of 1,162 or 0.8%. Now think of the brazen dishonesty it takes to say an overwhelming majority are in favour of change after polling 81 people out of 147,000. But it gets even worse. A number of submissions from the public were received but ruled to be out of scope with the engagement plan and therefore not considered before the vote. But Mayor Kim LaCarf maintained yesterday the council had consulted with the community before it voted on the changes which were put to council in an urgent motion on Monday night. And she added that the issue was too important to be subject to an opinion poll or consultation, and we need to show leadership on behalf of our community. Or in other words, we couldn't risk finding out that most people don't want to change the date, so we asked a bunch of people who we knew would support it. However, Darebin councillors Lisa Messina and Julie Williams voted against the resolution on Monday night and slammed the council's decision-making process. Did we follow the proper channels to initiate change? I believe we have not. It does not fall under the umbrella of council decision-making. Warrendary Elder Ian Hunter, listed on the Darebin Council's website as an Indigenous elder for the community, said yesterday he was not consulted over the move. Who did they consult? We're all Australians. We put our differences aside and go forward as one. So this is just blatant dishonesty by yet another Greens-led activist council. But it gets even worse because what the mayor is really saying is that Australians just ain't woke enough on the issue, and only if they were better informed, they'd change their minds. The mayor was quoted in the Herald Sun stating, "If Australians were better educated, they would feel ashamed to be celebrating on January 26th. It cannot truly be a national day when the oldest part of our nation cannot own it equally with the rest of us." Now, was she misquoted or was that a slip of the tongue? Not at all. Here she is on Sunrise defending that statement.
Do you stand by that? Do you say now to the people of Australia on national television that they should be, that they are not educated, that they do not know what happened in 1788, and that they should be ashamed and that they're uneducated?
I think the thing that we're trying to do here in Darebin is start a national conversation and build a greater understanding of our history.
Do you stand by that statement, Kim?
Yes, I do.
You see, this is just a milder version of anyone that disagrees with us is Hitler. If you disagree with our position, you're just not educated. You're a low information voter. Only us select few know the truth, and therefore our opinions are more important. And can we do away with the "we want to start a conversation" doublespeak? It's quite clear you don't want to start a conversation with your own council residents, let alone anyone with a differing opinion. Starting a conversation means we want to ram our own views down everyone else's throats and call them bigots if they don't agree. But it's more than that. It's about identity politics. Your views as Indigenous people count more than those who aren't.
How is that a true reflection of what's going on in your shire? 81 out of 148,000.
This isn't a question of making a decision that is popular. This is a decision about...
but aren't you elected to make a decision on behalf of the people of your shire?
In the best interests of our community, yes. And what we're hearing from our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is that January 26 represents or marks the beginning of invasion and dispossession. And we think that it is inappropriate to be holding our national celebrations on that day.
The best interests of who? The 0.8% of Darebin City that are Indigenous? What about the other 99%? Well, their opinions don't matter apparently. But remember, we'd all probably change our mind if we were just that little bit better educated, like this activist on the ABC, for example.
Actually, 26th of January signifies when Cook came to Australia and landed on a beach in Mosman called Cobbler's Beach. Symbolic stuff is important, particularly when you have the 26th of January when Cook landed. I mean, if Australia cared so much about that day, why is it now a nudie beach and we don't even have a national monument on this nudie beach?
Unbelievable. May I just remind that Aboriginal activists that you saw there that January 26 is actually when the first fleet landed, not Captain Cook. Nor did it land on Cobbler's Beach. And in fact, there is a monument to mark the spot where it did land.
And I would add that Captain Cook had been dead for 9 years when the first fleet arrived on January 26, 1788. So there you go, another Looney Greens council in Melbourne telling us what we all should think. And don't be surprised if there isn't a few more to come. Apparently Hepburnshire Council and Moreland Council in Melbourne's north are considering similar moves. So if you live in one of those council areas and don't agree with how the councils are conducting themselves, perhaps it's time to make your voice heard at your next local council meeting. I'll see you next time.